I ran into one of my favorite authors, literally at the water cooler at South by Southwest. And in that moment, I absolutely, completely lost all of my words. Not one word came out in the right way and in the right order. And I sputtered and I blah, 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 blah. And it was at a podcast recording. And so I sort of redeemed myself sitting and listening and asking a question in the podcast recording. But I started to spiral a bit for the next day or so. I should be better than this. I mean, who am I? I mean, why am I even here? I don't deserve to do this. And based on my conversations that I have with many, many leaders, I imagine that you have felt that way before. And so before I walked onto the stage to speak at South by Southwest, to do my job well, to serve this audience, I had to get myself together. I had to remind myself of all the tools that I wrote about in the book Joyosity and the ones that we talk about here on the Joyosity podcast in order to get myself together. And I did, because these practices work, but you have to work at it. So if you are new here or you've been around a long time, welcome to the Joyosity podcast. I'm Jenn Whitmer, keynote speaker, award-winning author, and in general, all-around joy bringer. And we are wrapping up a series on Joyosity in practice, how leaders stay human when it matters most. Because Joyosity is not just a nice idea. It's a way to reconnect with yourself and other people so we can build workplaces where people actually flourish, and ways to practice courage, sometimes when it's easier to stay quiet and just protect the status quo. Leadership is one of those things that doesn't fall apart or survive in one big dramatic moment. It's over time, how we handle pressure, how we manage expectations, and our own individual beliefs. And that's where joy matters. And I think where it gets misunderstood the most, because joy is not optimism. It's not pretending everything is fine. And it's definitely not a reward for getting everything right. It's a practice we return to over and over and over in real times of pressure and when pushing harder isn't working anymore. So this whole series has been about that, with real leaders facing real tension and moments where staying human is what we need to do and what matters most. And today we're going to do one of the most popular episode types that I hear from you. And that is an In Case You Missed It episode with a guest. And returning to the podcast is Michael Whitmer. Michael's work sits at the intersection of leadership, team culture, brand elevation, crisis communications, and values-based marketing. And he has a real heart for helping people work better together as well. He shares thoughtful insights on belonging and trust and purposeful leadership. He is the vice president at Look East. And in case you didn't guess, he's also my husband. So let's welcome Michael Whitmer.
Yay!
I'm so glad you're here.
It's good to be here.
Yes, fantastic. So I'm really excited for us to have this conversation, because we actually haven't had a lot of time to debrief what has gone on over the last couple months, not only just in our household, because both of us have been traveling, but even on the podcast, and what that means for leadership that we do, that you do in your work and with your clients and coworkers and people, and what I've been doing. So we've got this like practical space to have this conversation for leaders. And I would love for you just to start with a few of your big takeaways over this season and the guests that we had on.
Yeah, I'd start by saying there's some pretty incredible guests. I mean, you've had some great folks on talking from just such different perspectives. with so many interconnected components. I think that was a thing that I probably took away the most, is that it doesn't actually matter which level of leadership you're in. If you're just starting out or just managing yourself, as you'd often say, through to somewhere in the C-suite, there were just so many different nuggets of things that we need continuous reminders about, because we forget about how to do this, or it's been a while and kind of that it's worn off a little bit. So hearing the stories of other leaders talk about the situations that they've been in, and how they managed through those, was really helpful, I think, through this whole series, and definitely was bringing joy into really practical applications.
I love to hear that, because that's always my hope, is that we have designed a series that interconnects and overlaps, mostly because of that idea that repetition is a mercy. Like we forget, and we're like, well, I mean, just like I did at the water cooler, I forgot all my words. And then I had to work through all of these things. And it's just helpful to remember, when we're hearing it from somebody else's perspective, we're like, oh, right. Sometimes it's a brand new idea. Sometimes we heard it before and didn't actually try to apply it. And, and hearing it another time helps us continue to, practice leadership, because it's not a position. It's a practice that we do throughout our lives. So I'm going to run through a quick, here are the people that we had on, in case you are listening and you missed it and you haven't gone back to listen to the other episodes. We had on Heather Campbell, who is an author and fellow keynote speaker, Epec Gray, who is a consultant, Melissa Dinwiddie, who's a creativity expert, Harry Cook, who is operations and culture, and all around funny human being, Karen Anson, who is Australian and works specifically around HR and legal issues, Catherine Casalino, who is the book cover designer of Joyosity and the Playbook, Ken Miller, who is a fellow keynote speaker and author, and Rohit Bhargava, who runs the Non-Obvious Company and my publisher at Idea Press Publishing. So those were our illustrious guests from a wide range of expertise and areas of the world, even, and experience. So, Michael, what did you take away as you were looking and thinking about it this month? What are some of the takeaways that you had as you were listening?
There were a lot of really good, practical tips or practical things that I heard from people that I kind of wrote down, and kind of here and there, and some things like, oh, I'm going to try that, or that's a good way to phrase that. Had a lot of those, and I'll tell you a few of them. But I thought I would just start off with the things I did not like. I would just say I was not happy about it. But Karen talking about how healthy conflict is necessary. We need to have conflict. And I didn't like it. I didn't like her saying that.
It really is an inconvenient truth, for sure.
Yeah. And so several of the leaders just talking about the importance of conflict, and really I think underneath that, or alongside of that, was really our humanity in the way that we are working together, where we've got people coming from all kinds of different situations and stories they're talking about, and things that are happening for them, and our work relationships are just one element of lots of things that are happening around. And so I think that the reminder that conflict is really an important part of our relationships at home, at work, in all of our lives, it just, it's normal, is good. But then also I think the things about why the benefit of pushing through that, or pushing through the you refer to it often as the niceness sometimes can cover up what really needs to happen. And so I think that really stood out to me as a good reminder of some of the things that we need to do.
Yeah. Both of us sit in the category of natural conflict avoiders. Like the two of us do as our Enneagram types. I, joke, but am serious about being a recovering conflict avoider. And for me, what I am afraid of conflict is I don't like the discomfort. I don't like the pain of it, because I feel like I'm going to be trapped in that forever. And so I kind of peace out. I'm like, okay, bye. like it's fine. That is my moonwalk out of this situation. Or I get really stoic, like I have no emotion. Here's what we're going to do. When I'm not choosing good, healthy conflict strategies, like that's what I'm doing. And that's why I don't like it. What about you? Do you not like conflict? You're like, Karen made me mad. So when she reminded me of this, what for you as a leader makes you want to avoid it? And what have you found in your own experience makes it better when you engage with the conflict?
Mm-hmm. My role, the work that I have done at Look East, at many of the agencies I've worked at, and the kinds of roles that I've had over time has really been in account management, account service, sales types of roles. And so if somebody is upset, that usually means they're not going to pay for it. And never want to get in that position. He's not going to, whatever. So I definitely have over my career learned how to and worked at how to take care of client service, how to take care of clients, and how do we get to yes. And there was definitely, my maturity has changed in that it's not yes at all costs, which is what I felt like when I was younger, as that we, it did. The answer wasn't, when they said jump, you said how high. It wasn't no. No was never an answer. And I think listening to some of the leaders that you talked to, several of them were about like reframing that and thinking about not necessarily as conflict, but really thinking some about the curiosity that comes with how to provide feedback in a better way, how to think about challenging your clients in the right way about things, about assumptions that they're coming to the table with. I think it was Rohit in particular who was asking some questions about, I like where you're coming from, but I don't understand this. Yeah, as a good way to kind of open up that thing. I think Harry had a similar kind of idea of like, how do you help your colleagues, not only people that you're reporting to, but your colleagues and your clients or your boss or any of those kind of things, begin to think about things broader than they would. And when you just say yes and you avoid conflict of any kind at all costs, you're really giving up a lot of that opportunity that there is in new situations, that sort of thing.
Yeah, the curiosity piece I think is the most important to that, because shockingly, for as much as people communicate, we're not very good at it.
Yeah.
And so people will say an eighth of what's in their head, and then we make an assumption about that. And if the other person just says yes out of fear, or they're not going to pay, or I don't want to have conflict, I want to be nice, we lose not only the intention, but I think we often lose a better idea. One of the things I have noticed, so if you are new to Michael and Jenn Whitmer, we've known each other for 45 something odd years, which is amazing because we're 27. But
exactly
what I have noticed you mature in over your career, our relationship in marriage and parenting, is getting to a new idea. Like if people just present idea 1 and 2, you're like, well, what could be number 3? What could be number 4? The creativity and curiosity that comes from being willing to face the discomfort of, oh, they might not like me. Oh, they might not pay for it. Oh, this could be, whatever that is preventing us from getting over the hump. And I think I've watched you do that really well. And I think translating that to other leaders is that we can miss actually even better idea when we're not willing to face conflict, or what we perceive as conflict in that way. Well, besides the things that made you angry, what is something else that you took away from listening to some of these other leaders?
I think that There's so much we have in common, and we often think maybe it's just I'm the only one who feels this way or whatever. That I thought so. There was a lot of empathy in hearing the stories of the people that were going on, but also just really appreciated some of the more practical things, like Ken talking about cognitively what is happening to you when you're in fear or when you're in anger, and like the brain part. That is, I can. I think I'm feeling this way, but there's actually something going on inside your head. And so recognizing some of that, I thought was really helpful to think about. That is why a deep breath, let's take a minute, let's give a little bit of space to think about these things really matters. And then I think there was a few of the different guests that you had that talked about, as they give feedback or receive feedback, how to do that, what to do when the brain is doing its thing, and like how do you kind of handle your own your feelings, both coming in or going out, about things. So I thought that was really profound and thought provoking. Things I think I've heard before, but need to come back to again and again.
Right. Well, I'm going to keep referring to my flub at South by with Jenn Hatmaker of like, because it took me a moment to realize what was going on. Like, I knew that I wasn't doing well, but I had forgotten in that moment that I was in what I call lizard brain. Ken and other people refer to it something else, which means my ability to regulate my own emotions and produce strategy, high level thinking, all of that was offline because I was surprised. Now, in that moment, I was surprised and excited. I wasn't afraid necessarily, other than afraid I was going to say the wrong thing or look stupid, which is exactly what I did, but recovered because it's fine. It made me memorable. That's what I'm going to say. So when I was going through that moment, we all have those times where, oh gosh, I am not in my right space. I am not at my best in this moment. Some of the things that I teach people how to do, besides the taking of the deep breath, the grounding, like wiggle your toes in your shoes, like little things like that are tiny. What is something that you heard that was either new or a great reminder from a guest from this series? You're like, oh, I need to remember to try that in those moments where you're in lizard brain, where your, adult cognitive functioning is offline because your humanity is showing up.
Well, I think the biggest one for me is definitely giving some space between my action and reaction from the moment that things are happening and you're on the call and it's going sideways real fast, and it's just like you're going. It's that being able to take a break and to step away from that. I think it was Karen talking a little bit about that idea of making sure there's some room or some space to pause. And when you're in a client-facing role, it's just easier just to move ahead and just like, but it actually can be very valuable for everybody if we're just like, you know what, let's just take a second and let that sink in or process for a moment before pressing on. And I know I've learned from you a couple of different ways about how to give some space when you're talking about something, and it can feel like eternity when it's silent. But and we don't even realize it's only been a few seconds, but just like giving some of that space to recover from what is currently happening, and just being aware of that, being self-aware enough that I need a break or a moment. I think I picked that up from a few of the different speakers just talking about their perspective and how they have dealt with that.
Yeah. I remember Heather Campbell talking a little bit about that pressure of perfectionism. And because her book is about being good, like good is good. What if good is good enough? And one of the pressures that I face, I don't qualify myself as a perfectionist. Like, I don't need it to be perfect, like 100% locked down, but I do feel a pressure of urgency. Like, so the pause is hard because I want to get through the difficulty and I want it to be good. And so I'll get stuck in that space and struggle to think or believe I have enough time to really pause. What's yours in that space? Like, what are you afraid of? Like, I'm afraid of like, oh, we're not going to get it done on time. What is the pressure that you feel when you know that pausing would be good, but what is that other side of that
Yeah.
sentence?
Oh, that is I'm gonna look dumb. I'm gonna look
Mm,
stupid if I don't have the right answer, the right words coming out of my mouth that moment. I'm gonna look incompetent.
mm,
Those are the stories that are rolling around in my head about if I just took a break and stopped for a second and let there be a pause, they might think I don't know what I'm talking about or whatever.
mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. And what have you found actually happens when you either take the pause in the meeting or even reschedule a meeting or take the time for a walk or a pause? Like, what have you noticed is different when you're not just pushing through?
I think that, well, for myself to be able to take the break or to step back from something, then I feel like I've got clarity of my own thinking and like how do I want to approach this or bring this conversation forward without just automatically jumping to the yes sir, or how high or whatever, but really thinking about how do we move something forward. I think in other sets of circumstances where I've seen somebody else or I've been in a meeting and I just like, okay, I'm just going to start this sentence over again. People kind of relax a little bit because they saw
Mm,
me be like, okay, that was not exactly how I thought that was going to come out of my mouth. So let me try that
yeah.
again. And so the group begins to relax a little bit. And that part of my, showing up with my humanity with the people that I lead, are they can get a sense of like, okay, we don't have to be perfect all of the time. It's okay to stumble a little bit, or whatever, however they can feel, but just like a relaxing can happen.
Yeah. I really like that because the idea that when we model imperfection, that's where connection happens.
Mm.
Connection is actually in the imperfection of what we do, because when somebody is perfect, there is a distance that we
Mm.
feel, not necessarily unattainable, because some people are like, oh, I can do that, but there's still like a distance. And then that distances us relationally from all the people we're trying to work with. So I like that idea of the relax. And that is where better ideas happen, because we're not so afraid of failure.
Mhm.
We're not afraid that we're going to get clapped back on if we don't say something exactly right. All of those things produce uh, so much better results for people.
Mm.
And even, I mean, like one it's not silly, but seemingly insignificant thing that I do around that is we don't edit the podcast. And some of you who are like podcast crazy people are like, we can tell. But the reason I don't remove the ums or take out big pauses is because we as humans need those breaks to process, to understand what's been going on.
Mhm.
And that redo, like call a mulligan, start over, lift up the needle, put it back at the top of the record, whatever analogy you want to put there, is something we need as humans and actually produces better results. So it happens in a meeting as well when you show your humanity, but also give that opportunity to other people to process and relax. Everything doesn't feel so, intense about it all the time. And because joy is about belonging and connection as much as it is about impacting and doing great work, they both matter so much.
Mhm.
So I'm going to switch a little bit, and I am really curious about some of your responses. I'm combining a little bit of what EPEC was talking about and Catherine. So EPEC was talking a lot about timing and
Mhm.
understanding yourself about timing. And Catherine, who is a book cover designer, has been in thousands of meetings where timing pressure is intense because book deadlines happen, like things have to get out, but also emotions are really high because this is somebody's creative work. And I'm curious because you have also been in many of those meetings where a creative person has had to present something where strategy also mattered and timing really matters. What did you take away from those two experts?
Mm-hmm. I think that the thing that I heard from Catherine that was really powerful for me was that she was talking some about like in the feedback process and really understanding that whoever's giving feedback is trying to make it better. We're after the better thing for everybody, and I think that she said, there are a lot of possibilities and a lot of solutions to the things that are coming. So people sharing what I wanted it. I like this idea. I like this color. I like these things. They're trying, and her just accepting that they are trying to make it better, even if she then has to say, well, I understand where you're going with that. Let me see if I can add a professional view and to that thing. But the other thing that she said that was pretty powerful to me was about the real danger of not being clear about where the project is headed. You can get, if we're not clear about where the project is headed or what we're trying to accomplish, and it's unclear, then you can go off in lots of directions. And she was kind of mentioning some about even needing to speak up about if the title or the subtitle isn't clear, then visually she may go off into a direction that wasn't where they intended, and how easy that is to do. If we're not clear about where we're going, and not necessarily how we're going to get there, that's what the team is for, but where we're going as leaders, then you can get really off course. And so I thought that was really powerful. I think that as well, there were some really interesting views that that IPEC brought about our own self-awareness and disclosure in the middle of all of that is happening, because we all have experienced these feelings in some way, and so just identifying some of those. But just interesting. Those were definitely things that stood out to me from their perspectives.
Well, as I was thinking about what I learned from this, I go back to my sessions with Catherine and what she presented in the first round of Joyosity book covers. Like we got 7 or so. We had a session where I kind of blurted all the things that the book was about, and then we got these 7 designs from her. And the awareness that IPEC was talking about and being vulnerable in sharing was something I really had to do, because one of my fears is that people will misunderstand what joy is, and they will think that it is light and fluffy, when joy is gritty and it is resilience. It is the thing that brings us through hard times. And I had to not only share that about some of the designs, and I'm also really, because I am also a creative person, I don't want to criticize someone's designs out of hand. So having to be aware of my own fears about the design, and then my fears about how she might feel about what I was going to say. All of that is happening at the same time. And I had to get really vulnerable and say, I am afraid that people will see this cover and think this is a children's book, which was really scary to say. But her response was like, that is so helpful. And we could easily move that to the side and choose one of the other designs that were much better fit for a book that was really for leaders in businesses who were doing difficult pressure work. And I want to lead them toward real joy. But it was scary. It was really scary to say, I'm afraid this is going to look like a children's book in that sense. But you're right in that the awareness of it has to really matter in what you're saying to other people.
In that episode, you two were talking about the importance of having a strong opinion and no ego.
Yes.
And how that's like a hard line to kind of walked down, I think, as a creative person, is somebody you can have a very strong, I like this. This is really nice. And as a strategic person, I'm like, strategically, this is the right thing. Also, I don't have an ego in this, that if we need to change it, we can change it. And then like, not a lot of people have that. And, but I thought that was really powerful to have a strong opinion, but no ego about it. And even communicating that, I think that was one of the things that Catherine was like, this isn't, as much, it's not going to hurt my feelings if you don't like these things, because my job is to find the things that we are looking for,
Right. And that's a little bit like what Melissa was talking about in the creative process, because there's so many things you just have to toss away.
Right.
Like, and like recognize that this is bad when it comes to strategy, but you can't think about that in the creative part of the process. Yeah. You just have to create, and then you can edit or cull or redesign. And that's where the ego has to really be laid down. And in the creative process, you just have to really go for it. And those two things also have to be balanced in some way. And I think recognizing where you are in the process is really important. That's something Melissa talked about too. Are we creating? Or are we honing? Are we editing? Are we, choosing? Because if you start choosing in the middle of the creative process, you're not going to get good work. And that applies for yourself. Like, what am I doing in this meeting? What is this meeting for? Is this meeting for decision making? Is this meeting for brainstorming? That is such a key leadership role to know for yourself before you walk into something like that. Have you experienced when something like that has gone off the rails, where you're like, oh, I thought this was a decision making meeting, but we're still brainstorming, or vice versa, or something along those lines?
Yeah. Recently, we've been working on a deck, a presentation for the board of directors for the Center for Food Integrity that I work on. And we started with a deck where there were 4 of us working on kind of different elements that were coming together. The one that was presented to the board did not look like the original one that we put together. And actually what happened was our very first version, and then every subsequent version, was us helping to think through and visualize what we were talking about to get to a place of like, okay, here is where we've refined it down to where we need it to be. But there were so many times that we all had to kind of check in with each other, like, are you okay that we're not going to use that slide anymore? And went, yeah, yes. I want a better slide. But you needed my first slide in order to understand where we were going to be able to make the next thing or whatever. And the final slide set did not look much like the first one at all. And that's the creative process. And if we would have hung on to, or if I would have hung on to, no, I put my data table was really pretty and I really wanted it on there, then that would not have done any good ultimately for what we were trying to accomplish.
If you're watching on YouTube, my face is like, is a data table ever pretty? Sorry. From the detail, the person who yours was gorgeous, I have no doubt. I love spreadsheets, as anybody who's been around me a lot knows. Sarcasm there, friends. Well, we are going to come back next week because I think there are a few really practical takeaways. I know we've told some stories today and we've talked a little bit ourselves, but I think we've got some more really practical takeaways about how you can continue to apply Joyosity in practice, from our experiences, from the experiences of the experts, really in your everyday walking around leadership life. So I would love to hear, in the meantime, what did you connect with here? What are you still thinking about? What challenged you? What you didn't like? Because since Michael started with, I didn't like this. What did you not like? And you can always reach me, email, DM. You can email me at Jenn with 2 N's at jennwhitmer.com, or LinkedIn and Instagram are the places I play the most. And so feel free to drop me messages there. And we're going to have all of that for you in the show notes. And also connect with Michael here. You can connect with him on LinkedIn, Michael Whitmer. He has lots of great things to offer you. And before we totally wrap up, I would love to just challenge you a little bit, because I got to have a coach invitation. I can't walk away without it. But what's the one little nugget that you can try? It's Wednesday when these come out. Maybe you're listening to it Thursday or Friday. What's something you can just try to jump in a little bit and walk a little bit more toward joy? Because joy is really staying connected to who you are and being really authentic, even when things get hard. And if this episode was helpful, share it with someone who needs to hear it, who would love to hear more. And when you rate and review the show and share it, it helps other leaders join us in this movement to create joy in our workplaces, so everyone is better. And that's what we would love for you. So, Michael, thank you for being here today.
It's great being here.
Great being here. And we will see you all next week. Thanks so much, everybody.